Hi class, today we're going to be looking at completing Form 941. We're going to be working 3 problems today that are B problems. We're going to start with problem 3-11B. We're going to work 3-12B and also 3-13B. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going straight to Cengage. And you should be able to see Cengage on the screen now. And again, I'm working problem 311B. First of all, you have to know who you are. You're the Gallagher Company, and you're gathering information that's needed to complete Form 941. And this is for the quarter ended September 30th. That's an important piece of information there. We're going to use the information that's presented below to complete part 1 only in this problem of Form 941. The number of employees for pay period that included September 12th is going to equal 15 employees. So one of the first things they ask you to complete on Form 941 is how many employees are you going to be working with for this particular quarter. The wages paid the third quarter are $89,352.18. The federal income tax withheld in the third quarter is $10,195. The taxable Social Security and Medicare wages are $89,352.18. The total tax deposits for the quarter are $23,865.92. All of this information is important, but especially look at the total tax deposits for the quarter. Do you see that they're less than $50,000? So this is going to be a monthly depositor. They've given you some notes and some hints to look at that are very important when you're filling out this return on Cengage. It says note, lines 5A and 5C of Form 941, tax on total taxable wages are computed by multiplying by the combined tax rate for both the employer and the employee. You'll remember that when we were calculating our individual problems, we took out for the employee the amount of the FICA taxes, and we also have to match that. So that's why the rates are combined on the 941 form. For example, the OASDI is 6.2% that is withheld on the employee, and the employer has to contribute 6.2%. So to make things simpler, they added 6.2 plus 6.2 to get the total amount of 12.4% that would be withheld from this company's or would be reported on the 941 for this company's OASDI. So they're going to multiply the combined tax rate for both the employer and the employee, and they do this for OASDI and HI. Small differences due to rounding may occur between this total and the total taxes withheld from the employees each pay period. Remember, there were some rounding errors or differences in what the employer matched with what the employee put in because of rounding. And so we're going to have to report these rounding differences on the Form 941. And the difference is going to be reported on line 7, as you're going to see in just a minute. It's called a deduction or an addition as fractions of cents. Also, they're hinting that in line 7, you're going to fill in Form 941 through line 6. So we're going to have enough information up here to get us through line 6. But then we have to fill in part 2, line 16 of Schedule B, and that information we will take and record or fill in on line 10. Note that lines 6 and 10 have to be equal. If the amounts are not the same, we correct by entering amount to make equal on line 7. Line 7 differences are caused by how calculations are made on Form 941 and the amounts withheld from the employee's earnings plus the employer's payroll taxes in each pay. So to make this a little bit simpler, we're going to first fill out only part 1 of this form. There are 5 parts to this form. We're just going to do the first part. And we're going to fill in from lines 1 to 6 the information that they've given us here. And then on line 7, we're going to have to determine what the fraction of cents is, or what the rounding errors were for this company. So notice that part of the quarterly federal tax return is already filled out for you. They filled out the name of the owner, and this is the trade name of the company, and this is the address for that company. Now, what you have to fill in is the time period of the quarter that you are working with. And that information, again, was given right here. We're doing the quarter ended September 30th. So you want to choose the quarter for July, August, and September here. Then you're going to go to part 1, which they ask us to complete in this problem. On the first line, it's asking you for the number of employees who received wages and tips. That information was given to us in this problem. The number of employees are 15. So in box number 1, we're going to record the number of employees who received wages. Wages, tips, and other compensation that these employees received for this quarter was given. The amount of the total Social Security and Medicare taxes is $89,352.18. So on line 2, we're going to put that amount in there. Again, the amount is $89,352.18. Let me see if I can copy and paste that in there. I don't know if that'll work or not, but we're going to try it. How about that? All right, the next line is asking you for the federal income tax withheld. In this chapter, they give us the amounts. Next chapter, we'll learn how to find or figure what this amount's going to be. The federal income tax withheld for the third quarter was this amount right here. So again, I'm going to copy and paste that amount here. All right, then we're going to move to line 4, if no wages, tips, and other compensation are subject to Social Security or Medicare, we would check this and go to line 6. But our wages that we've withheld here are subject to Social Security and Medicare tax. So we're going to move to line 5A. The taxable Social Security wages is the same amount that we had in line 2. That was the given amount of $89,352.18. So we'll copy and paste that into column 1. Then we're going to multiply this by the tax rate. This is for Social Security. The tax rate was 6.2%. And remember, because the employee and the employer pays the taxes, the tax rate would be doubled. So 6.2% times 2 is 12.4%. We're going to multiply the total Social Security tax, Social Security wages by the tax rate. So 89,352.18 times 0.124 will give you $11,079.67. And you multiply these two to get this amount. And so that's what you're going to enter into your column 2. We didn't have any sick leave wages that were mentioned, so just skip 5AA Part I or Part 1. 5AA Part 2, the qualified family leave wages, there was none of that. There were no tips that were mentioned, but we do have taxable Medicare wages and tips. It's the same amount that we used for the Social Security wages. These wages are also subject to HI. That's the Medicare portion. Notice the Medicare rate is twice the rate. Remember, the employee and the employer have to pay FICA taxes. So 0.0145 times 2 is 0.029 as the, or 2.9% is the amount of the HR tax rate, HI tax rate. So multiply these two to get this. So 89,352.18 times 0.029 is $2,591.21. You've got to round that one off to 21 cents. And so this was your Social Security tax. This is your Medicare tax. Nothing would go on line D because we didn't have any tips that were subject, or wages subject to additional Medicare tax withholding. So we're going to move on to line 5E, and they tell you to total the Social Security and Medicare taxes. So you're going to add column 2 from lines 5A, 5A1, 5A2, 5B, 5C, and 5D. In other words, we're going to total this column right here and put it in 5E. So $11,079.67 which was your Social Security, plus your Medicare of $2,591.21, gives you a total FICA taxes that were withheld at $13,670.88. $13,670.88 will go on line 5E. 5F is section 3121, notice and demand, tax due on unreported tips. We didn't have any tips, so we're going to leave 5F blank. Then we're going to move to line 6, total taxes before adjustments. We're going to add lines 3, 5E, and 5F. So let me scroll back up so you can see line 3 was $10,195. That federal income tax is added to the Social Security and the Medicare tax that we found here. So the total taxes on line 6 is $23,865.88. Now remember, in your instructions, they told you to complete just part 1, and we're going to fill in 941 through line 6. That's what we just did. So to find out what line 7 is, which is the current quarter's adjustment for fractions of cents, we got to figure out what this is. We can't just go back and multiply to find it. But what you are going to do is look at your instructions closely. Line 10 is what I would suggest you go to first. Or actually, it's not line 10. Let's see which one they told us to go to. They want you to take the information, it is line 10, and fill in line 10. And that's the amount of tax deposits that were withheld. Because this was a monthly depositor, the total tax deposits happen to be given to you at this point right here. This $23,865.92 goes in line 10. So I'm going to copy and paste the total tax deposits into line 10. Now notice that line 10 and line 6 do not equal. And that's because there were some rounding errors. It was really close. You see, this one has 92 cents on the end, and this one has 88 cents. So subtract the 92 cents, or take the 92 cents, subtract 88 cents from it, and that leaves you with a difference of 4 cents. This 4 cents is what we call the fraction of cents. So we go to line 7, and we're going to put in 0.04. Again, class, this is where students get lost. But you fill in the information to line 6 from your instructions. And then you would go to where you've listed your monthly deposits, add up the monthly deposits, and that total, which was given in this problem, is the total deposits. The deposits does not match the total taxes before adjustments. So we are going to force this one to match this. So what we have to do is take the difference between line 10 and line 6 and enter it on line 7 as 4-cent difference. If you added 4 cents to line 6, it will make it equal line 10. You want line 10 to equal the total taxes plus the adjustments for rounding errors. So there was a 4-cent rounding error there that we figured up. Then you move to line 11, and they made no mention of this, so don't write anything in that's not in your instructions. There was nothing about line 11B or line 11C. And then what we would do is we would go on and we would fill in the remainder of part 1, form 941. So what they want is the total non-refundable credits. You're going to add lines 11A, which we had nothing on there, 11B, and 11C together. So this 11D is 0. So we'd move to line 12. The total taxes after adjustments and non-refundable credits, we're going to subtract 0 for 11D from line 10, which leaves you with the amount of $23,865.92. So this amount right here and this amount now are equal. The total deposits for this quarter, including any overpayment applied to a prior quarter and overpayments applied to 941X. We didn't have any of these, but so we're going to just leave this alone because there's nothing from a prior quarter that we had to fill in here. There was nothing about deferred amounts of employer's share Social Security taxes. There's nothing there that we know about. We didn't have any refundable portion of the credit for qualified sick and family wages. There was no retention credit from worksheet 1. We don't know about any of those. The total deposits, deferrals, and refundable credits, we're going to add lines 13A, 13B, and 13C, and 13D together to get that. And so I did miss something up here, so let me go back to it for just a second. They did want the total tax deposits for this quarter. And again, those total tax deposits for the quarter was given to you right here. 23,865.92 would belong on this line 13. Total deposits for this quarter. Is the same as this because we didn't have any overpayments. Then we'll move on to line 13E where they wanted the total deposits. So we had to have something on line 13A. We didn't record anything on 13B or 13C or 13D. So again, we're just putting in the amount of the deposit here. We don't know anything about line 13F. So line 13G, we're going to subtract 13F from 13E, and that would leave us with the same amount here again. Then you read your instructions. If line 12 up here is more than line 13G, which is not, we'd enter the difference here. So there was nothing to enter in there. If line 13G is more than line 12, which it is not in this case, you'd enter the difference here and then decide how you wanted that to be checked. And so that's as far as we can go with this particular problem. So I'm going to check my work just to make sure I've got everything in here. And it looks like we're all okay for this problem. So I'm going to move on to the next part of this problem, which is the next problem, which would be problem 312B. So we're going to look at 12B now. This is a continuation of the previous 311B problem. And again, we're going to be the same company because it's a continuation of the company that we were just working with. Now notice here, this company has gathered information that it needs to complete Form 941. The Gallagher Company is a monthly depositor with the following monthly tax liabilities. This is what they're going to have to deposit, or this is what they're actually paying to the federal government for the FICA taxes and income taxes that they've collected. So in July, the first deposit that was made is $7,891.75. In this particular problem, they're telling us to complete parts 2, 4, and 5 of the 941 form. We already completed 9.1 in the last problem. So all this was already completed. You had already entered it in. Now we're going to go to part 2 and answer these questions. Part 2 says, tell us about your deposit schedule and tax liability for this quarter. If you're unsure about whether you're a monthly scheduled depositor or semi-weekly scheduled depositor, see section 11 of publication 15. And they want you to check one of these, either A, B, or C. In A, it says line 12 on this return is less than 2,500. Well, it's not. Line 12, if we go back to the previous problem 11B, line 12 said it was $23,865.92. So that is definitely more than 2,500. So we're not going to choose A. If you are a monthly scheduled depositor for the entire quarter, enter your tax liability for each month and the total tax liability for the quarter. And when you're done with this, then you're going to move on to part 3. So it turns out that we were a monthly depositor because the total amount of our deposit was $23,865.92. That's less than 50,000. So we're a monthly depositor. You got to go by those rules that we talked about in the previous video. So for month number 1, or actually we're going to choose B here. So right here where it says 16, you got to choose which one you are. You're B. We were not a semi-weekly scheduled depositor because we would have to have more than 100,000 in accumulated taxes to be able to use part C. So we're using part B, and they want you to fill out the monthly tax liability. The monthly tax liability for July is $7,891.75. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it into month one's deposit. The second month's deposit for the month of August is $7,984.90. And again, that goes in for month two. For month 3 of September, I will copy and paste that down into the deposits for month 3. Then what we're going to do is we're going to combine all of these together, and it should end up being the same amount of the deposit that we recorded on line 12 in the last problem. So add the 3 months together, beginning with month 1, $7,891.75 plus $7,984.90 plus $7,989.27. Combine the 3 of these together, and that amount should agree with 23,865.92. That's the amount that they gave us for the total of our taxes in the previous problem. And this total must equal line 12. Then we're going to drop down and we're going to look at part 3. And we will apply any of these lines to ourselves. In part 3, there was none of these that were mentioned. We're going to move on to part 4, and we're going to fill this in. And it says, do you want to allow an employee, a paid tax preparer, or another person to discuss this return with the IRS? If you do, you put in the designee's name and phone number here. So they're going to have to show you that information. They're going to have to tell you that information for part 4. And in this case, we didn't mention that we wanted a designee, a third-party designee. So we're going to call this no, or we're going to put no in here for this blank. Then what you have to do is sign your return. Notice this is already filled in for you. You would do this in cursive. You're signing your return here, or that person is signing the return here. You print the name, you tell who the person is. In this case, it's the owner, and their telephone number. If you were a paid preparer, you would fill in this information, but that did not happen. So then you're going to check your work. And you can see that we've got everything entered in like they wanted us to for this part 2 and part 4 and part 5. So that's how you do the first 2 problems of this video. which is problem 3-12B, 3-11B, and 3-12B. Now we're going to move to the next problem, which is 3-13B. And you'll notice that on this problem, this is a different problem altogether. So we're going to complete a new 941 form. We're going to be Stan Barker, and we're opening a quick stop market on January the 2nd. The business is subject to FICA taxes. And at the end of the first quarter of 2000, and let's say it's 21, Barker, as president of the company, must file 941 form, the employer's quarterly federal tax return. The company is a monthly depositor. It's important that you realize that this is a monthly depositor. If you're a monthly depositor, you're going to have to show your monthly deposits, just like we did in the previous problem, which was 3-12. If we had been a semi-monthly depositor, then you have to complete Schedule B of Form 941. That does not apply to us since we're a monthly depositor. We just record it in Part 2, I believe it was, of the form. Now for this company, this is the address of the company. This is the date that the 941 form was filed. It was completed on this date here. Each employee is paid semi-monthly on the 15th and the last day of each month. Shown below is the payroll information for the first quarter. All pay periods were the same. So what they've given you, they've already figured out what the quarterly wages are going to be for each one of the employees and the total amount. They figured out what the OASDI tax is, and that would be based on the semi-monthly pay. So they've already figured that this was the semi-monthly pay, which you take your quarterly wage and divide it by 3. Actually, you take this and divide it by 6, because if it was semi-monthly and there are 3 months in a quarter, it'd be 6 pay periods. So in other words, 10,440 divided by 6 pay periods. Let me back up again. This is your quarterly wage that they gave to you. This is your OASDI tax. Since these are employees, you would multiply this by 6.2% to get $647.28. In other words, they gave you the amount of tax. You don't have to worry about figuring it, but that amount is based on the quarterly wages. That's the total amount of OASDI tax that was withheld for Albert Greer for the entire quarter. This quarterly wage would be multiplied by 0.0145 or 1.45% for the Medicare portion, and that's how they got this. The federal income tax we're going to discuss in Chapter 4. All of these taxes added together are the total deductions. So the OESDI tax, HI tax, and the federal income tax, those are your total taxes that were deducted. And the difference between the total deductions and the quarterly wages are what that person actually was paid. That's the net pay amount. And each one of these employees would be done similarly. What they ended up doing is adding up to find the quarterly wages. The total wages paid during that quarter is $55,890. They added up to find the total OASDI tax for the quarter for the employee. 810.48 was the amount of tax that was withheld for the Medicare portion, and this was your total federal income tax that was withheld from each employee's paycheck that amounted to a total at the end of the quarter of this amount. Then they figured the employer's FICA taxes. And the employer's FICA taxes is based on the total amount of the quarterly wages. The total amount of the quarterly wages, this $55,890, would be multiplied by 6.2%, and that will give you this. There were no rounding errors, so it was the same as what the employee contributed. The employer also matched that amount. For the Medicare portion, they're going to take the quarterly wages and multiply it by 0.0145. Notice that they have a rounding error. Notice this was the HI taxes that were withheld on each employee, then added them together, and this is the part that the employer matched it with. That was where the fraction of cents comes into play. Now here, they've broken this down for you, this information down for you, and they figured the employees' FICA taxes, the OASDI amount, and this was per payday. So in other words, they've taken the total amount of the OASDI taxes that the employee put in, and they're dividing it by the number of pay periods in the quarter, which will be 6, and that would give you the amount of the FICA tax for one pay period. This is per pay period. So again, you could find this amount. They've already given it to you, but if you wanted to find it, you would take the $3,465.18 and divide it by 6 paydays for the quarter, and that's how they came up with 577.53. The employer's tax per payday, this was the employer's taxes for 6 pay periods. You would divide this amount by 6, and that will give you this figure right here. That's the total amount of the employer's OASDI tax for one pay period. The employee's FICA tax, you're going to take this amount right here and divide it by 6 pay periods. That's how they're getting this. You're going to take the employer's share and divide it by 6, and that's how they get this. And then this federal income tax is divided by 6. That's how they get this. What they did for you is they totaled the taxes for one pay period. Then notice they multiply it by 6 paydays to get the total taxes for the quarter. So the total taxes for the quarter is this amount right here. Additional information is none of the employees reported tips during the quarter. Using 941 below, prepare the return based on the information above. And again, they've given you some hints about the instructions, which are basically the same as they gave you in the last problem. So we begin by filling out the employer's identification number. Stan Barker is the name of the person responsible for paying these taxes. The name of the company is Quick Mart or Quick Stop Market. This is the address. All that was given. We have to fill in the quarter that we're working toward. And this was for the first quarter, which would have been January, February, and March. So the first quarter is selected. Then we're going to scroll down here and we're going to put in the number of employees who received wages during this period of time. So you count them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 employees. So for line 1, we put down there were 4 employees for this pay period. The wages, tips, and compensation would go in line 2. The quarterly wages were $55,890. We're going to copy that and we're going to paste it in line 2. Then we're going to move to fill in line 3, which is our federal income tax that was withheld from the wages. Here's our federal income tax column. The total amount would be copied and pasted into line 3. There were no wages, tips, and other compensation. So we don't put anything in here. Line 5A, taxable Social Security wages, is the same as this amount right here. We're going to multiply 55,890 times 0.124. And that's going to give us $6,930.36. We didn't have any sick leave wages or family leave wages or tips, but we did have taxable Medicare wages and tips. So we're going to copy this 55,890, all of it subject to Medicare, and we're going to multiply that by 0.029. And that will give you $1,620.81. We didn't have any tips. So we're going to move to line 5E, where they're wanting us to total our Social Security and Medicare taxes. We're going to add column 2 from lines 5A to 5D. So add these two together. And 8,551.17 should be entered here. Then we're going to look at 5F. We didn't have any of these. There were no unreported tips, no tips at all. Move to line 6, the total taxes before adjustments. And what you've got to remember is you got to pick back up line 3, which was your federal income tax, and then your Social Security and your Medicare. So my income tax was this amount right here. I'm going to add that, 4,680, to my line 5E, and the total is 13,231.17. And that's my total taxes before adjustments. All right, then you're going to move to line 10 according to your hints and your instructions. Line 10 wants you to put down the total taxes that you deposited. And the total taxes that were deposited, they had figured it for us right here at $13,231.26. So I'm going to copy that. And paste it in line 10. Notice that line 6 and line 10 do not equal. So you're going to find the difference. You're going to subtract what's in line 10 from line 6 to see what the difference is. There's 9-cent difference. So on line 7, I got to go back to line 7 because this did not match this. I got to find the difference, and that difference is 9 cents. When you add these two together, it'll come back up to this line 10. So there were some rounding errors that we had to take care of, and they amounted to 9 cents. We didn't have anything to put on the line 11A or B or C. So you're going to move to line D. And I'm so sorry, I made that same mistake a while ago, but we're going to bring this down to this first part because there was no, they didn't tell us anything about that. That doesn't go there. A, B, and C together was 0. So there would have been a 0 that would have gone here. 0. Since it's 0, I'm going to leave it blank. The total taxes after the adjustments are going to be this same amount here. So let me copy and paste that in right here. Then the total taxes for this quarter are going to be the same amount that we got here. Then we're going to look at this. There were no deferred amounts. There's no refundable amount. There's no refundable portion. And then they want the total deposits. So we're going to bring this same amount down because there was nothing else to enter in to the other. These three are going to be blank. There were no advances that were received. The total deposits would be the same amount again. And then if line 12 is more than 13G, which is not, it's the same, you put the difference here. There's no balance that is going to be due here. If line 13G is more than line 12, which again it's not, it's equal, you put the difference there and then decide how you wanted it to be returned to you. Then we move to part 2. And you want to put in whether you're a monthly depositor or a semi-weekly depositor, or whether you are have more than 100,000, then you would put that in to this block right here. A does not apply to us, but B does because we're a monthly depositor. They told us that in the instructions. So we're going to choose B here. Since we are monthly, we've got to fill in this amount right here in part 2. If we were semi-weekly, we'd have to go to Schedule B and complete it. But since we are a monthly depositor, we're going to put the amount of our taxes that we deposit in each month. So I'm going to go back up here and look at our instructions. Do you see for one payday, the amount of the total is $2,205.21. Because we're figuring this for a month, and these employees are paid semi-monthly or twice a month, we need to multiply this $2,205.21 by 2. So put in 2,000 in your calculator, $205.21, and multiply it by 2 pay periods. If they're paid twice a month, they're paid semi-monthly. The amount of taxes that would be withheld for the entire month would be 44.10.42, twice this amount. So you have to multiply this by 2. To get what would be filled in here. So for month number 1, twice the semi-monthly taxes is this amount. It's going to be the same amount in month number 2 and in month number 3. When you combine 3 months together, you're going to add these 3 together, and that will give you the total amount of taxes that were withheld, which is also this amount here. When you add these 3 together, should be the same as this amount right here. So the amount of taxes for the quarter were $13,231.26. And that's what we entered here. So then we would go to the next part, which is part 3. And in part 3, they want you to tell about the business. So in your instructions, they didn't give us any information about stopping paying wages. So we just skipped through the lines for this. They didn't give us any information about health plan expenses or any of this. So basically, none of part 3 applies to us. And then they ask you the question in part 4, may we speak with the third-party designee? And most of the time they tell you in the problem somewhere that they are not going to share it with anybody else. So I will select no here. And then what you do is you sign in part 5, the amount. This would be in cursive. This would be Stan Barker would have to sign here. And then you print his name and the president and the best phone number here. So the rest of that information was pretty much straightforward. And that's all you need to do for this particular problem. So I'm going to check my work and see if there's anything that we left off here. See, they did use no here. And we're okay with adding up the deposits. And the rest of this looks good. So that's all I want to talk to you about today. We're going to do another video next time we meet, because talking about these forms takes a while. So I'm going to stop sharing this with you, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.